When tending site to repair a leaky door seal, always check with the staff to see where the water is actually coming out from and whether it is happening during the day or during the wash cycle. During the wash cycle, water is sprayed all over the inside of the oven chamber, and this is when most leaks occur. Oven door leaks can be caused by several things. It could be simply a worn out door seal that has gone past its service life, is brittle, hard and cracked. It can be the handle assembly out of adjustment. It could be a door hinge assembly that has become loose. The weather seal strip may have come loose and or the silicone is missing from behind it. Before any testing of the oven door seal, it will be necessary to wipe the area below the weather seal strip. On this glass area around here, it is very common for dirt and filth to build up on this surface and the staff never clean it off. If dirt and filth does build up underneath here, it will force the oven door seal to deform, causing leaks. To test an oven door seal, this applies particularly around the bottom of the oven door where most of the leaks happen. Open the oven door and with a piece of paper put it against the seal. Then close the oven door on top of it. The oven door seal should firmly grip the piece of paper and it should be difficult to pull out. Repeat this process all the way around the entire oven door seal. If the oven door simply requires more clamping pressure, take the acorn nut off here, this one's been removed. Take all the flat washers from the end and the handle mechanism and use the flat washers one at a time in here. Replace the door handle. What this does is it moves this striking latch further back, pushing the oven door further in. That will give more clamping pressure. With a lot of ovens out in the field, these washers have already been moved from this end to this end here. So if we run out of adjustment because we don't have any washers, the striker on the inside of the oven door will need to be adjusted. Using a felt pen, mark the location of the door striker assembly so we can see the height of the ball rider and latch mechanism as we adjust it in and out. With a 17mm socket we can loosen off the two bolts and evenly adjust this assembly in, ensuring that we don't lose height for reference. This will give you more clamping pressure at the oven door. After doing any adjustments to the door handle, this must be checked. As you close the oven door, the ball rider plate here must just run on top of this ball here. What this does is it prevents stressing of the hinges of the oven door because the latch mechanism load is taken up on top of this ball here. The other thing to note is that the oven door handle should go closed with a nice firm snap, not being too difficult for the oven staff to use. If the door seal fails around the bottom at one spot only, it is possible to adjust out that particular spot. If the door seal fails in a large area around the bottom of the seal, it will be necessary to adjust the hinge or the door handle assembly. Door seal adjustment in and out. Here we have a test jig to illustrate how the mechanism works to adjust the door seal in and out. We will pull this to pieces and show how the workings are done. We have removed the M6 screw so that we can see the brass nut that's behind the panel. We will now remove the panel and look at the brass nut. This is the brass nut behind the panel. On some ovens across the bottom, in the centre of the brass nut is a small grub screw. Remove this before making any adjustment. The brass nut has a thread on the outside of it to an M10 nut welded to the oven chamber. So if I remove this one, we can see an M10 nut that's been welded and the brass nut itself. As we can see, it has a thin wafer on the outside to give us adjustment. So if we look at it from this angle, we can see that the rubber seal has a groove that this panel clicks into, and on the inside of the oven we have this panel here. By adjusting the brass nut in and out, what we're effectively doing is moving the seal in and out. Obviously, we do not want to remove this panel to make any adjustments to the brass nut. So the simplest way to do this is to use the center punch. We can drive the center punch through the top and through the bottom of the slot and turn the brass nut whichever way that is required. So if we wind the brass nut out, it brings this panel out and brings the whole door seal out. If we want it to go back in, we'd tap the brass nut the other direction, which will wind the brass nut in and bring the door seal further in. After all the adjustments have been made, return the Allen key screw and washer to position and lock them up firmly. Check the door hinge assembly. Grab the oven door and wriggle it up and down. What we are trying to feel is movement in this rod end or door hinge assembly. If these become loose, tighten them. The locking nut that is on the inside in here is difficult to access. It is easily tightened with a hammer and a pin punch.